Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. It's Thursday, July 3rd, 2025. This is episode 428, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite movies, V for Vendetta. So it's July 4th Eve. I think I've only started hearing that this year. So I saw a meme that basically has people saying, don't forget to put cookies out for Captain America, and this being sort of a reference to Christmas and Santa Claus. So Christmas Eve, you're supposed to put cookies and milk out for Santa Claus when he drops off presents uh, for the family. But since it's July 4th, we should put out cookies and milk for Captain America. Uh, but I would appreciate it more if some of the people who were posting it weren't so ignorant of what Independence Day really is about. In other words, I don't think you can be pro-war all over the world and still celebrate Independence Day. I mean, the hypocrisy, the gall that you are going to celebrate independence and yet meddle in countries all over the world. It's just a little kind of frustrating for me. And it doesn't really matter if you think that it's moral or immoral, because it's just your opinion. What does your opinion have to do with the people who live in different countries? Especially if you are in opposition of someone who also believes that they are in the right. And so they're trying to get independence and liberty for themselves. But here comes America, because America and Americans who are so brainwashed by their media and the propaganda of the government can't seem to believe that other people would think that they could be free on their own. Every once in a while, when I have my subscriptions to like Netflix or Amazon, every once in a while, V for Vendetta comes up as a suggested watch. And whenever it does, I always have to watch it. So I don't know, I don't even know how many times I've watched it, but I always enjoy it whenever I see it. It's a 2005 movie. It was originally a comic book that was turned into a movie. The Wachowski brothers, I think, or are they sisters now? I don't know. Doesn't matter. I think they made the Matrix movies as well. So they uh so V for Vendetta, the movie, is a dystopian movie, which is not really so different from what we have today. And the original writer apparently did not like the way the movie came out. Uh, I remember talking about it a long time ago with someone, and it's because it wasn't clear what the politics were, like which political party was the baddie. And so I think that that's the reason why the original writer didn't like it, but without having done any research at all, right? So not going into what the original comic book was supposed to be like, what the intent of the author was. I'm just going to look at the movie for the movie's sake, right? Just to take the movie, because that's what a lot of people are going to do. They're going to go and they're going to watch the movie and be ignorant of everything else. And so, what message does the movie convey? And this is pretty much what I did in university, right? I would say it doesn't really matter what an author said or did in other aspects of their life. What survives is the writing, right? So what did they write? What does the writing convey? And so then all that other stuff that you hear about the person and what people say they believe, well, it becomes hearsay, right? Because what they really believed, what they actually thought was there, that's what they wrote. And maybe it's idealistic. And when they go to actually try to put into reality their ideas, it didn't turn out that way. That's fine. But it's the idea that is important, right? That's what I want to focus on. And so that this way you can just focus on the movie for the movie's sake, right? You don't have to say, oh, well, this is what they meant by that. No, if you're off the street, you walk in the theater and you see this movie, what are you walking away with? And what you walk away with, you do so because that's what the movie is conveying. All right, now that I've done that spiel, to basically let myself off the hook from doing any kind of background research of the writer and movie makers and whatnot, I'll give you an overview of the movie. If you haven't seen it, you really must watch it, especially after especially because of what we're living through right now. It'd be kind of interesting. I show it to people at my church. I've made my kids watch it, and they always kind of are, uh, you know, they're wowed by the movie only because it's so parallel to what we're living in today. So there was unrest because of America's constant war. So the context of or the setting of the movie is they're in England, right? So because of America's never-ending wars, there's civil unrest and it's spread to England. And so there's this crisis moment. So how do you get the people to continue to obey the government or even a new regime? What you do is you develop a disease and its cure. You introduce the disease into the population, and then a couple months later, you become the hero by introducing the cure. Okay. So, according to the movie, they introduced the disease, which is unnamed, but it kind of looks some virulent form of smallpox, and they kill nearly 100,000 people, children especially, right? They contaminate a reservoir and they target an elementary school. So all these children are killed. They're dying of this disease. People are freaking out. They're panicking. The government basically says, "Oh, it's a terrorist thing, right? Muslims are behind it." And so they cause all this fear, and then suddenly this pharmaceutical company shows up with its cure, and everyone settles down. Whoever was part of that cure, they become the new heroes. They're all given high positions in government. And the person who's running for president at the time, Adam Sutler, I believe is his name in the movie, he's leading an ultra uber conservative government who's also super Christian, right? And so they come to power. And that fits in with this ultra right, the portrayal of the so-called ultra right, right? And so, and that's why a lot of people were able to plug into Trump being the new Hitler, right? Uh, so he's supposed to be ultra right, ultra conservative, super Christian, which then makes you realize that he's anti-Muslim, he's anti-gay. Muslims and gays are rounded up and thrown into prison, executed, and whatnot by a government that is extremely corrupt, not just in the politics, but also in medicine, through the pharmaceutical industry, through the news network, news media, through religion. And you can see through their special committee meetings that you have law enforcement, you have media, you have I guess some other departments of the government, but you can see prominently the ones that are constantly speaking are the secret police, right? The sort of CIA type people, the visible police, right? Detectives, media, uh, and uh, and then those are the main ones that are always talking, and we can see today in our society that these are the voices that are most often heard. I think when the corona hit, right, the cervasis, I kept suggesting to people to watch the movie. By that time, it was already a 15-year-old movie, but I was like, "Go watch the movie. You gotta see it, right?" Because when I was listening to all the stuff, I remember when they were rolling all this out. The previous note, like the our university shut down after spring break, right? So the first day back from spring break, they said, okay, school's closed, right? So we were there, right, going to class, and they said, now we have to shut down. It was so stupid, right? But the previous November, they were like, oh, it's in Asia. And I told everyone in my church, oh, there's another bird flu, swine flu type thing. So watch when it'll track it to see if it'll make it to America. And what was interesting was that a bunch of people in my church got really sick back in November, right? And I thought it was a really virulent flu. They missed church for a month. It was really bad. But it was like, okay, now you're done, and so you're protected for the rest of flu season. And I didn't think much of it after that, right? But once March came around, nothing on the news made any sense at all, like what they were telling people to do. And there were stories of people who said, oh, I'm sick, and no hospital would take him, right? And so the stories just did not line up that if it was as deadly as they say it was, why weren't they taking people at the hospital, right? They caused this mass panic, but then the response just did not match what they were saying is about to come. The science didn't make any sense. I mean, wear a mask, what? Right? I mean, the particles of the virus, right? The virus is smaller than what the mask can stop. And so what is this mask thing? And then you have to sit through the ridiculous thing of like, well, it stops it a little bit. And it's like, did you not pay attention in science class, right? The particles are smaller, right? They can go through the holes in the mask. Come on. And I don't know. It was so stupid. I couldn't believe that people were making the arguments that they were, and these were intelligent people, smart, or so I thought. And it didn't make sense to me why they were buying into all of this nonsense. And then, so all of it was ridiculous. And so I just kept telling people to watch the movie. None of it made sense. That's not to say that no one was affected. My brother's family was affected. Uh, you know, several people in my own family got sick. I never got sick. My 92-year-old dad never got sick. So I mean, it was what it was, right? But then also in the movie, you saw that there was this constant surveillance through listening technology, right? So they can listen in your home. But the government has gotten better since then. Now they listen to us through our cell phones, our microphones, whatever, and it's just going to get worse with Palantir. Uh, so we're living in the surveillance state already. Okay. So I just wanted people to sort of realize that, hey, it's like this is here in the movie, right? And there are arguments as to how that works, right? Is the government so unoriginal and creative that they rip off movie scripts to put their plan into action? Or are certain people looking at the world and saying, hey, it's possible for this to happen, right? Because you have a writer just saying, "Oh, this is possible," and writes a story. And yeah, it was possible because they did it, right? That kind of thing. I think it's a mixture of both. And so the new regime in the getting back to the movie, so after this disease and the cure, Sutler, he wins the election, and so his new regime now controls everything in the way that I just described through the media, politics, religion, um, all of that surveillance. And then V, who's the protagonist or the hero, he seeks to end the corruption and usher in a new era of not this, right? So bring it away from the brink of this authoritarian regime and reintroduce freedom and free thought and, freedom in general. The movie itself is ultra violent. There are some sexually suggestive scenes. So if you are one of my former middle schoolers, just go, finish sixth grade, you might have to ask permission before you see the movie. Anyway, now that I've got my I got that out of the way, I just wanted to go over some quotes from the movie. Go over some quotes, and then tomorrow I'm going to talk about July 4th as a whole. Anyway, so it's a light episode, if you will. Here's one longish quote. This is V when he's announcing to all of England his plan, right? So there are, of course, those who do not want us to speak. I suspect even now orders are being shouted into telephones, and men with guns will soon be on their way. Why? Because while the truncheon may be used in lieu of conversation, words will always retain their power. Words offer the meaning, the means to meaning, and for those who will listen, the enunciation of truth. And the truth is, there is something terribly wrong with this country, isn't there? Cruelty and injustice, intolerance and oppression. And where once you had the freedom to object, to think, and speak as you saw fit, you now have censors and systems of surveillance coercing your conformity and soliciting your submission. How did this happen? Who's to blame? Well, certainly there are those more responsible than others, and they will be held accountable. But again, truth. Truth be told, if you're looking for the guilty, you need only look into a mirror. I know why you did it. I know you were afraid. Who wouldn't be? War, terror, disease. There were a myriad of problems which conspired to corrupt your reason and rob you of your common sense. Fear got the best of you, and in your panic you turned to the now High Chancellor Adam Sutler. He promised you order, he promised you peace, and all he demanded in return was your silent, obedient consent. People should be afraid of their governments. Oh, that was my next line. That was my next quote that I was supposed to do. I lost my I lost my what is it? Bullet point, right? Anyway, okay, now that I fixed that. So all they wanted in return was your obedient consent. And there it is, fear, right? I wonder, fear makes people compromise a lot of their principles. And I grew up hearing stories about fear. I said in another episode, my father lived through the religious persecution in Korea at the hands of the Japanese, right? They tried to make everyone adhere to the Shinto religion. And my father, of course, was a Christian. And so he refused. And so, as a small child, getting beaten by adults, and then seeing his father getting beaten by police, you kind of you wonder how would you do, right? And so you know that your grandfather, who you never met, stood up to authority to protect their principles. And your father did it even as a young boy. He did it starting when he was 9 years old, and then he maintained his line until the war ended when he was 15 years old, right? So all through that, didn't compromise at all, beatings or no beatings, food or no food, right? So I always wondered, would I have the guts to overcome my fear? What if my family was threatened? Would I be able to hold the line? I talk about these things with my family to try to prep them that maybe one day we might have to make difficult choices. I mean, it was a reality for me as a young person, trying to make sure that that this was if the rubber ever met the road, that might have to be made. And keep in mind, 25 years ago, I never dreamed that we would be living in a society like this right now. When I got married, or before I got married, when I first started dating my wife, I painted the picture for her. I said, hey, if we were in a persecution situation and someone said, hey, if you don't bow to this idol, we're going to kill your wife. And I told her, I said, I gotta tell you right now, I'm not going to do it. So And so she said, "That's okay. I won't do that for you either." So we were cool. But that's kind of the conversations that I would have with my family anyway. So would I have the guts to actually be able to do that? I don't know. I hope I do, right? But I hope I never have to be tested though. So the next line from the movie, people should not be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. And this is where we are. We fear the government more than it fears us. In fact, there is no fear on the part of the government, right? We fear the IRS, the NSA, the CIA, the FBI. I mean, you name it, there are just so many. But what do they fear? I mean, seriously, what do they fear? They control the courts, they control the media, they control law enforcement. I mean, what do they fear? They fear nothing, right? And this is backwards. It should be that governments fear the people. That's and this is what's so important, especially on the eve of July 4th. Governments must fear the people, and they must fear rebellion. So a pastor friend of mine just now joked with me. He said, pastors should fear their congregation, and which I disagree with, right? I think pastors should fear God, right? That's what keeps the line. That's where you're. And so even if everyone in your congregation says, no, we don't want to hear about Jesus anymore, tell us, let's sing for a long time, then you got to have the guts to say, no, that's not what a church is about, right? It's not a karaoke bar. And even if everyone leaves, that's the line you have to hold, right? So it's not the congregation that causes fear in a pastor. It's God that should be the source of any kind of fear. And that's the principle in the line that you got to hold, right? Anyway, so governments, though, should fear their people. That's what should keep them in line. That if they step off the line, right, that if they break their own laws, if there are hypocrites forcing us to do things while they don't do it themselves, they should be punished with extreme prejudice and speed as well. Then Evie, the person played by Natalie Portman, she says, talking about her dad, he used to say that artists use lies to tell the truth, while politicians use them to cover the truth up. I think, this is why I like comedians so much, right? And they're not lying necessarily, but they're spinning things in a different way to create comedy so that the expected uh, next thing to happen doesn't happen. And that's where you have the comedy, right? Everyone has that expectation. And when you violate that expectation, that's where you see comedy. And you can see physical comedy and all different kinds of comedy, right? But all of that, though, reveals another level of truth, right? And so good comedy reveals truth, right? A deeper aspect of something that we thought was an already completed conversation. And so bad comedy, and I never laugh at bad comedians because they're not really telling the truth. They're not revealing it. They're mocking people. And that only is funny to people who share the same perspective. It's like a lot of liberal comics, maybe not the big headliners, but some that I've seen online. They're not funny at all to me. And it's because all they're doing is mocking people. They're not really revealing any sort of truth at all. And politicians, they use lies to cover up the truth. And that's all we hear these days, to the point that when someone actually does tell the truth, then they get attacked, sort of like Thomas Massey. And they use the traditional sources of truth to help them, like the news media. I grew up on Walter Cronkite, yeah, and he was, everyone trusted him, but not in, so a lot of people my age probably trust the news more than they should. And so they use that, they take it over, and now they are just simply sources of propaganda. They buy church leaders off with the appearance of importance and recognition. They buy scientists off with grants and fame. And as an Asian, I have to listen to all of this stuff. Why can't you do it like that pastor over there? And then his church is huge. Or look, why aren't any of your children scientists or doctors, because they get all these grants and they're super famous. Well, yeah, I mean, if you compromise your integrity, I guess you could do, I mean, I think back in my early, as I was finishing up my PhD and I was still leaning liberal. I had offers to publish. It was insane, but I had to walk away from all of that because it wasn't true. And I just couldn't put my name to something that I didn't actually believe, and would never teach to people that I love. The next line, a quote from the movie, is like, beneath this mask, there is more than flesh. Beneath this mask, there is an idea, Mr. Creedy, and ideas are bulletproof. And there it is. Ideas, principles, they don't change. Even if people were to abandon them, forget them, never know they even existed, waiting around to be rediscovered, that is the truth. Not only to know, and so it's our obligation, our duty, our responsibility, not only to know what the best ideas and principles are, but to understand them and live by them. And that is what we would call integrity. It's July 4th Eve. People are going to supposedly celebrate independence and freedom, but I think they're only doing it, a lot of people anyway, are only doing it in word and not in deed, especially if you are a neocon and supporting all of the wars and the violence and the government authoritarianism, no matter which side of the aisle you are on, then I don't think you quite understand the ideas and principles of independence and freedom. That's it for this episode. I will talk to you next time.